At this point, it becomes extremely important that you follow along using the documents available through the Dropbox link at corruptclearfield.com. I'll be asking you to read along with some of those. Throughout this entire ordeal that I explained last episode, Tara had begun attending the Phillipsburg Church of Latter-day Saints with hope. She was becoming well integrated and getting to know everyone there. Of course, she was also sharing her quote-unquote story about being a woman who was victimized by the abuse her husband, John Gill, had dished out on her time and time again. Now, as they would later find out, she was essentially using them to accomplish a means. They were simply the ends. But at the time, they bought in and they believed her. This is part of a recurring theme that I talked about starting with episode 1, which is domestic abuse is real. And there is real concern, or at least there should be, for the women who are victims of it. But we must be vigilant, especially when the laws in place are ones that are easily abused and leave men with absolutely no recourse or legal remedy for due process. Anyways, back to the story here. She convinced the entire congregation that they should help her retrieve her marital property from the residence. Now, for those of you who are wondering why I use such a technical term, it's because when you are under a restraining order, such as John is at this time with the PFA, you have no right to your marital property. Marital property being any property that you and your wife both share. This is important because it essentially means that at any moment, with no notice, Tara can arrive and take any items from the house that she so pleases. There's absolutely no recourse for John other than to take it up with the courts after the fact. And this is precisely what happens. John, of course, is at the house. Tara had moved in with hope, and Tara convinced a large portion of the Phillipsburg Latter-day Saints Church to go with her out to the house, at which point John was forced to go next door to his church building since it is technically a separate address, and he's not violating the PFA by staying there instead. Well, Tara decides exactly what she wants to take as marital property. And let me tell you, folks, she decided everything was marital property. By the time the Phillipsburg Church of Latter-day Saints had finished helping pick the entire house clean, they had left only a few select items, one of which was the water heater that was only left behind because it was too large to actually fit through the door. They had to leave it unhooked and on the floor. The Phillipsburg Church of Latter-day Saints is led by President Bob Morrison, and it's understandable that all of these folks were convinced that they needed to help Tara. Now, of course, I'll get to this in just a second, but as you can imagine, as they're picking this house clean, more than a few of them throughout the process realize something fishy is going on here. This doesn't seem right. This isn't what this woman originally sold us. She said she wanted to retrieve her marital property. In actuality, she's essentially stealing every item from the house. And when I say steal, I mean steal. You see, most of the items in the house were items that John had collected over the years with his previous wife, Martha, and Tara had absolutely no claim to them. And she knew it, still electing to take as much as she possibly could. Before I go any further in talking about this, I want to read the police report from that day, August 26, 2014, because things got more than a little strange. This is the police report. You can find it labeled as document number 2 in the Dropbox folder. And I'm just going to read it verbatim, and then we'll go over some of the more interesting aspects. Responded to the above location for a report of a PFA violation. I arrived on scene and saw Jennifer Baker, Tara's care aide. I asked where John was, and she pointed to the church and stated that she didn't call. John was peeking around the corner of the building. I asked if he called. He stated yes, because Tara is not to be at the house. I stated that no, I read the PFA. She is the protected party, and he is not to be at the house. I then asked him to show me his copy of the PFA. We went inside the church, and he showed me a letter from himself and from one ex-FBI agent, Billy Jack, remember that name from the first episode, instructing Tara not to be on the property. After a lot of effort on my part, John seems to understand that a letter without a notary stamp means nothing. A trespass letter to his wife for their home means nothing in this case, and the PFA would trump it anyway. I advised him to direct any questions on the matter to his attorney. I then spoke with Tara and Jennifer, telling them to call me if there are any more issues. I also took Jennifer's written statement on the verbal exchange that John can easily contest should he be charged. While talking to them, John stuck his head out of the back door to the church with a phone in his hand, asking for me to speak with someone. I, thinking John may have called his attorney, answered the phone. I spoke with one Billy Jack, the, in quotation marks, ex-FBI agent, proceeded to make request of me to give him the keys to the home and property. I then explained to him that the concept of marital property was something that he must understand. If he was ever in law enforcement, he would already know. He asked me to call later for some reason. I stated okay, hung up, handed the phone to John. I stated I'm not talking to him again. He has nothing to do with this. I then explained to John that I had enough evidence of a PFA violation to arrest him, and that if we got one more call, he would be arrested. He stated that he understood. I advised Jennifer to call if there were any more issues while they were at the house, and cleared. Cleared means he cleared the scene or cleared the incident. Now, there's a lot of information packed into that small statement there, so let's go ahead and unpack some of it. First of all, Billy Jack is claiming to be an ex-FBI agent, which I find to be particularly strange considering Tara has sort of cornered the market on this mysterious claim to fame of being a highly ranked government official in her former employment. Nonetheless, if Billy Jack was an FBI agent, why was he giving John a document that he signed as an ex-FBI agent that he knew would not have any legal authority, giving John a false confidence that he could tell Tara she had to leave and ignore the obvious PFA violation that he was engaging in? Also, why did Billy Jack tell the police officer that he was an ex-FBI agent and the police officer simply laughed at him? That's not something you hear about every day, and generally if someone has sway, they're on the phone calling someone else and word quickly runs through the chain of command. If something's going to be done, then it gets done with police chief calling this officer, telling him to stand down or something of the sort. The entire exchange is just extremely strange. Also, notice at this point, and this will be important for later, that Tara is claiming all of this is marital property, as I explained previously. Marital property is something that is very loosely defined, and essentially there was no law broken that day as she convinced the Phillipsburg Church of Latter-day Saints to help her remove almost every single possession from John's home. It's just a terrible, terrible unjust law, these protection from abuse orders. After the fact, John emails Stephanie Cooper, his lawyer at the time, claiming Tara is using false PFA allegations to claim everything they own as marital property and stealing all of his possessions. He mentions to Stephanie Cooper in this email, which is document number 3, by the way, in the Dropbox folder, that he told the police and he petitioned the courts that she had stolen everything. They essentially told him, you're out of luck. And everything that I viewed as well that John had saved up as part of the case file, Stephanie Cooper did nothing either. She filed nothing on his behalf. She documented nothing that he claimed had been stolen. And as far as I can tell, she never even responded to this email that he sent her explaining what had just happened. I spoke to Bob Morrison, president of the Phillipsburg Church of Latter-day Saints, and he had some very interesting things to say. He said, we have all basically been duped by Tara. We thought she was a woman who was in need, who'd been battered by her husband John, but we quickly realized, after getting to know her a little better, and especially after what occurred that day at the residence where we essentially took all of the possessions out of the home, with Tara claiming they were all her marital property, we realized that she wasn't exactly what she sold herself to be. In fact, President Morrison was so concerned that he thought John would actually file a civil lawsuit against him and the congregation at the Phillipsburg Church of Latter-day Saints. He reached out to John personally, apologizing. True to form, just like Hope Martin had talked about, John graciously accepted the apology, forgave him immediately, no questions asked, no further expectations. One of the last things Bob said to me, and the last things President Morrison said to me, was John is a good man, it's terrible what happened to him, and we are all truly sorry. About a year goes by at this point. Everything is relatively quiet. John is laying low, trying his best not to have any additional PFA violations hurled at him, and John's PFA is actually set to expire on September 15th, 2015. Unfortunately, about 1 month away from that date is when his living hell really begins. We'll pick up next episode with exactly what took place that spiraled all of this out of control and brought us to the point that we are at now. Thanks for listening to this episode of Corrupt Clearfield. Remember, you can follow along with all of the documents I'm referencing at corruptclearfield.com. Just scroll down and click the link to the Dropbox file. All the documents are cataloged in order as they appear in each episode. You can also help to support this investigation as it continues, and also our family as we attempt to recover from the damage that has been done. You can donate either by going to corruptclearfield.com and clicking the link as you scroll down the page, or you can go directly to PayPal paypal.me/crazygaby. That's my broadcasting alias. Again, that's paypal.me/CRAZ as in zebra, YGAB as in Bravo, EY. Thanks for listening. Until next episode.